Good afternoon and welcome to Wayfind Marketing Live, where our mission is to encourage and equip business and nonprofit leaders. We want to help you simplify your marketing so that you can grow your business or your organization. AnnieLaurie, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Steve. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Well, today we are wrapping up a four-part series. This is number 4, and we've been talking about 3 things that businesses and nonprofits can do to get better results, to win more leads, to get more customers, which especially now is more important. It's more critical than it's ever been before. And so the 3 things that we've been talking about really help businesses when it comes to surviving. And then as things move forward, hopefully more to thriving. And so what we're going to talk about today is really that third piece, which is creating an online sales funnel to capture more leads from your website. And so I'm not gonna spoil it yet because we've got a lot to go through. But before we jump into that, just a reminder for our viewers and our listeners, these live streams are posted on YouTube. So the recordings are there. So the previous episodes, if you've missed the previous shows where we talked about clarifying your message, last week we talked about 6 things that you can do on your website to generate better results, to get more leads, capture more customers. You can go back to YouTube. We're going to be posting these on the website as well with show notes. And we also have this available as a podcast. So you can catch this on Anchor FM. You can catch us on Spotify. You can catch us on iTunes. You can catch us wherever you're listening to podcasts. And so the cool thing is what we're going to show you today is going to be practical. We're going to give you tips. We're going to give you some resources that you can use so you can start growing your business. Now, just by way of introduction, I'm Steve Phipps. I'm the founder and president of Wayfind Marketing. And this is my co-host, AnnieLaurie Walters. And we get the privilege of working with a lot of different businesses locally and around the country. Occasionally, we get to work with somebody out of the country as well, all with the goal of helping them simplify marketing and grow their business. And so, but AnnieLaurie, how are you? What's been kind of on your mind here lately?
Well, yeah. So one thing that I've been noticing as I just sort of try to keep track with what's going on locally here in Memphis is a lot of the small businesses, locally owned Memphis businesses, are coming together. And I really love seeing that unity when people come together. And a lot of them are coming together to try to help and benefit the people who work for them that may be laid off or furloughed or displaced. And one really, really cool example I saw was from one of my favorite restaurants. So when you think about Memphis, if you're not from Memphis, I think a lot of people think first about music and food. They think I'm going to
Absolutely.
hear something good and I'm going to eat something good. And what I love is that the owner of Swanky's and Sheffy's, 2 of my favorite restaurants in Memphis. Swanky's is like a taco shop and Sheffy's is salad place. So the owner got together with some other folks at this nonprofit in town called Slingshot, and he is putting on these daily live concerts from a rooftop in downtown Memphis. And they are practicing social distancing. They are urging people don't come down to see the show in person from the sidewalk, but they are broadcasting it live on Facebook. And the first show had 12,000 people watching live on Facebook, and they raised $5,000. And all this money is going towards this local nonprofit Slingshot that's helping people who are in poverty and in need in different ways. And so what I love about this is that it's this local business who is they're footing the bill for this on their own, and all the money raised is going straight into the nonprofit. But it's also helping the local music industry, because I think a lot of times when we think about the industries that are being hit right now, we think about entertainment, hospitality, and in Memphis we have a thriving music industry, and it's they're benefiting by showcasing these local artists and giving them an opportunity too to still come out, make more connections, and do what they love doing. And I think that we need that. Like, as we're stuck at home and we can't get out and do things that we normally like to do that recharge us and give us energy, the opportunity to come around a good cause and hear some great local music from the safe at home on your couch social distancing perspective, it's great. This is just a really cool thing that some small businesses are doing to benefit their community, but also keep the ball moving forward. I think that's really cool.
That is. That's just a great way, great example of businesses and nonprofits working together and innovating, doing things right now that they wouldn't have thought about doing previously. So that's a great example, AnnieLaurie. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, they have this website that's Don't Let Me Down. It's an old Beatles song, but Don't Let Me Down MEM is their hashtag. Don't Let Me Down MEM. And you can go to don'tletmedown.org if you want to learn more. I just wanted to mention that real quick. They have shows daily. So show tonight, 7:00 Central.
Very cool.
Yeah. So anyways, just a fun little note to, get us happy on this Friday as we're looking towards the weekend. But anyway, we're not here to talk about music and concerts and food, although I could probably talk about that for hours. So we're here today to talk about some really practical things that we can do on our websites to boost our sales. And so I wanted to kick that over to you now, Steve, and just let you explain at a high level what we're going to be talking about on today's show.
So there are three things when it comes to how do you win more business from your website? How do you capture more leads and that eventually can lead to more customers? Well, the first thing to give thought to is when somebody goes to your website, chances are what you're probably inviting them to do is contact us, maybe schedule an appointment. Maybe it's buy now, depending on what product or service you offer. The vast majority of people, though, are going to leave your website without doing anything. They're not ready to take that next step, whatever it might be. And there's a whole host of different reasons for that. So what we want to do is we want to create a lead generating campaign. We'll call this a sales funnel. We want to provide a way for people on your website to be able to do something that then lets you continue to market to them through email. And so there are three parts of what we're going to talk about today. The first is creating a lead generator. And that is something that is valuable enough that somebody would give you their email address in exchange for it. The second part is nurture emails. We're going to talk about emails that you can use to start building that trust, establishing credibility, and helping this person ultimately decide whether or not you would be the best company, product, or service to do business with. And then the third is a sales email campaign. It's different than a nurture campaign, but it is very intentional it's a very pivotal part of winning more leads. So those are the three things that we're going to talk about: is create a lead generator, develop a nurture email campaign, and then run a sales email campaign.
So, okay, when you talk about lead generator, what exactly would that look like? What are some examples of effective lead generators?
So the idea of a lead generator is really, it's a lot of times what a lead generator is it can be some sort of downloadable information, a PDF, maybe an infographic. Sometimes in times past, people have called this an ebook. We a lot of times we'll call it a guide, a downloadable guide that answers questions that people have. So for instance, when somebody goes to the Wayfind website, we have one there that is 6 ways to win more customers through your website. And so they give us their email address, and in exchange, they get this PDF. Now, I'll show a couple of examples that I've got here. Now, this is an orthodontist here in town. This is one of our clients, and their lead offer is an infographic. And the way that this works is when somebody goes to their website, they get this little pop-up. This is also a little available further down the screen. And it just says, hey, do you have questions about braces? We've got answers. And this is an infographic that people can download in exchange for an email address. And they then, this takes them straight to that infographic that they now have. They can download, they can print it off, and it's going to give them information that's going to help them as they're making a decision about braces. Now I'll show another one. This is a client that is in the 401k space. So they provide services in support of 401ks. And it's a very specific type of 401k. So we created a guide for them that helps people better understand what this particular type of 401k plan is. And here they ask for a little bit more information. So first name, company name, and an email address. Same concept though. They fill that out, and then it drops that person into an email campaign. And there are a variety of different types of lead generators, lead offers that people can use. Sometimes it could be, a lot of times if you go to an e-commerce website, you'll get a little pop-up that says, get 10% off your next order or get free shipping. Some companies will do a free trial or a free demo. So there's any number of different lead generators. In fact, we have a blog post on our website that we can put in the show notes that talks about some of the different kinds of lead generators. Sometimes people do webinars. That's another type of lead generation. There's a lot of different kinds that can suit just about any business, any nonprofit.
What I love about this is that this is something that as we have more time on our hands, everybody can do. Like there is a lead generating offer you can create to put on your website, no matter what your business is. There's always something, and there's opportunities to be creative. And like you said, it could be as involved as a webinar, or it could be as simple as a get 20% off. So how do you decide where to jump off? I mean, maybe somebody might have a lot of content they want to share that they think would be really useful. Some people may need some help. How do you figure out where's the best place to begin?
Well, part of it is understanding your customer, which goes back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. What is it what's something that they would find helpful? Some audiences, some customer groups are very in tune with webinars. Some industries, we've had clients in the past that white papers were very important. So part of it's just understanding what would work well for your customers, your future customers. If they need something quick, then 15-page downloadable guide's probably not what they're interested in. So thinking through what they would be interested in. The other is then just what resources do you have available to you? Some people are fantastic writers, so they could create the content themselves. Some people are very good at taking content and they're good using design tools, or they could use tools like Canva or other available tools to create that offer itself. Sometimes it's worth finding somebody, a copywriter or designer, someone who can help you do the components of it that either you don't have the time to do or the expertise to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've seen sites like Upwork. There are always requests for that kind of content creation. In a previous episode, I think in this series, we talked about just calling in, checking on the customers, picking up the phone, seeing how people are doing, asking some questions, doing a lot of listening. And, if people are doing that and you start to see a theme in what people are saying to you on the phone, that might be a clue as to a great lead offer that you could create for your website.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that, you might have a lot of ideas. And you may want to create several lead offers. I know I've been on websites where, a topic of interest, gardening. I'm planting a garden in my backyard. So I'll be on a website and, you can start to see the lead generating offers because they're like, oh, are you a beginner? Click here and I'll give you my guide, all the things I want to do. But then, so I'll click and get that guide, but then I'll be back on the website and there'll be another one and then there'll be another one. Like, can you have too many? Like, is there like a best practice as
it's best to start with one, get comfortable with that, get something that's going to appeal to the broadest part of your audience, or if you're going after a particular niche, something that's going to be relevant to your primary audience. And then from there, absolutely, there's a way to use those in combination. Sometimes it's starting off with a downloadable PDF, and then from there, invite them to a webinar. And then from there to whatever the next big step in the sales process is, book an appointment, schedule a call, something along those lines.
Yeah, that's great. So what about the story brand framework though? We've talked about clarity. We've talked about the story brand script. Like how do we apply what we've learned there to creating these lead offers?
Well, it's as you're, so one of the tools that we referenced a few weeks ago is mystorybrand.com, where you can create a free, what's called the brand script, which is the story structure that helps us create messaging that's relevant for our customers. And in going through that, when you're listing out and you're thinking about what the problems are that your customers are facing, that could be a really good seed bed for helping brainstorm and think about the types of content or what the topic of the content is that your customers would find valuable, that they would find compelling enough that they'll give you their email address.
Mm-hmm. I've also seen some companies do a lead offer by service area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, it can be as broad or it can go as narrow as folks want it to be.
But it's not like a call to action where you don't want to have a bunch of different calls to action. You could have a few different lead offers if it was like you said, broken out by niche.
Right.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
for explaining that. What's the second point?
So once you have a good lead generator, and so there's two different types of email campaigns that really have different purposes, but they work together. And the first is a nurture email campaign. Now, the idea of a nurture campaign is it does what it says. It nurtures. And we know that it takes time to build trust. Now, sometimes that can happen very quickly. But what we know is that a lot of people aren't going to make a decision right away, especially for services or products that are more expensive, or if somebody's not familiar with your business, then they want to know that you're trustworthy. And again, the higher the cost, the higher the commitment level required on their part, the more compelling, the more trust needs to be built. So an example of a nurture email is something that you send out on a regular basis. Maybe it's weekly, maybe it's every other week. And it's sharing informational that's helpful, it's useful. An example would be if for somebody who's blogging weekly and sharing useful, helpful information through a blog. Well, what you can do is you can send that blog post to your email list once a week. So if somebody downloads your lead generator, well, then now you start sending them this weekly email. They've opted in, they're giving you permission to communicate with them. And the idea of the nurture emails is that it just does that. You're sharing information that's building trust, it's building credibility, and it's helpful, it's informative, it's establishing the brand as the guide, as the expert, and it's making things better. You're showing how you can make life better. Some people will use it if they're doing a podcast, maybe to share that. But it's also, you should make mention of your services in those emails. But again, it's a soft sell. This is not, that's where the sales nurture campaign comes in, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes.
So here's a question, and it's about an old term.
Mm-hmm.
E-newsletter. Like back in the day, early 2000s, it was very important to have an e-newsletter. And I still see some organizations sort of really committed to their e-news. Like they're like, oh, we got to do an e-news, even though only like 10% of people open it on the click rate. Like, we got to do an e-news, but this isn't an e-news. That's not what you're talking about.
No. And it's interesting. There's been a little bit of at least in my opinion, I think there's been a little bit of a resurgence in terms of some like newsletters. But the thing about something like that is it needs to be information that's compelling. Probably about a month ago, I signed up for a daily news email. It's called The Brew, BREW. And I look forward to it because they summarize the news. It's really not, I don't get a bunch of the political bents. It's just, they put kind of a humorous, witty twist on things, but they're just giving me sort of a summary of the day. That's useful, helpful information for me. So I don't consider that spam. A lot of the old newsletters, it would just be information that just wasn't helpful, wasn't useful. And an important thing too is always make sure that people understand what they're getting. Because you're right, sometimes people will just have a little block on their website. Hey, subscribe to our newsletter. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. That doesn't help me understand what benefit I'm going to get in exchange for giving you my email address.
Yeah, no, that makes really good sense. Well, you mentioned it, and what are the best practices on frequency?
It's going to vary. One important factor, there's two important factors that I would suggest people consider in terms of how often should I send emails. One is, how often can you consistently send an email? Once you've figured out what content you want to include, again, it could be as simple as sharing content that you're already creating. So if you're doing a weekly blog post, great, you've got content there, fire that out to your email list. If you're creating additional content, again, you just got to ask that question, how often can I do this for the amount of time that it's going to take me to do it? And so if being consistent means once a month, then do it once a month. If you can do it twice a month and be consistent with it, great, do it twice a month. If you can do it weekly, great, do it weekly. Right now, we're actually sending out 2 emails a week to our list. And so letting folks know about the live stream and just the different topics that we're talking about. The other thing is, do consider your audience. Is what you have to say, the news email that I sign up for, the brew, well, that's daily because there's enough content daily to make it worthwhile. It might be that you don't have enough information to share on a daily basis, but maybe you have something weekly that's helpful. So there may be some experimenting, kind of finding that threshold for your audience, and just making some judgment calls. But then you look at the analytics and you say, okay, when we went to daily and we lost half our list. Well, okay, don't do daily. But
yeah,
so part of it is your capacity. Part of it is making a judgment call in terms of what you think your audience would find helpful. That's the whole goal of this, is not to annoy people. We want to share information that's helpful. And it is worth noting, people will unsubscribe, and that's okay. That's why it's there. The goal is you want to communicate to people that want to hear from you, that are benefiting from what you provide.
So some people I know, they're like, don't even email me. I don't check my email. Text me. So some people I think have kind of lost faith in email, but is email really dead?
No, I think that rumor goes around about once a year. Oh, this is the year that email does. No, it doesn't. Yeah. Email is still there. It's not going anywhere for the foreseeable future. Now, inboxes are a lot more crowded, and tools like Gmail are creating sort of these tabs where they're automatically directing certain types of emails based on their algorithm, based on their filters. So the challenge now is, and this is where it's even more important, that what you're writing, you're creating subject lines that grab people's attention, something that would compel them to open it. And then you've got to have content that is worthwhile. If your content sucks, then people aren't going to read it. They won't open it again. If the subject line is just, newsletter 3, why would I open that? It doesn't tell me anything. And so it is there. The inbox is more crowded, and so it becomes more important to make sure that you're checking off the boxes on content that is useful, helpful, informative, and that stands out.
Yeah. Well, you make a really good point about the headline too, because talk about noise. Like if your subject line says the same thing every time, organization name, newsletter. I mean, eventually, people aren't going to open it because it's just it becomes like background. But if you can take the most important story in your newsletter and somehow craft this great headline, I mean, it's going to take an extra step. Like you have to factor in the extra time to invest in creating that subject line. I think a lot of times people feel like, oh, I wrote this great email, I'm done. And then they're like, oh, now I have to think of a subject line. But the subject line is just as important as the body, because if the subject line doesn't make them click it open, doesn't matter what you said in the body.
Well, and I'm gonna share a quick tool. I'm pulling this up now.
Great. Yeah.
Because absolutely there is when it comes to a good email subject line, one of the questions is, well, if it's just in my head, how do I know if this is going to be compelling or not? Because some people are going to be more creative than others when it comes to these kinds of things. So the tool that we have found that's really handy is it's a marketing software called CoSchedule. So if you just do a search for CoSchedule email subject line tester, you will find the link. And what this does is it lets you type in whatever subject line is, and it'll give you a score. And it'll tell you what's good about it, what's bad about it, etc. And it'll give you different ideas and suggestions. So the higher the score, then the better, or the more likely people are to engage with it. And another thing that people can do is test subject lines. Some of the different marketing tools that are there will actually let you send 2 versions of an email with a different subject line. And you can set it to where whichever one gets the most opens is the one that goes to the rest of your list.
That's a very helpful tool.
It is. And that way you're getting data. You get to, part of it is art, part of it is science.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I know we're going to talk about sales emails too. And what I'd love you to talk about, as we try to transition from, we're talking about nurture emails as opposed to a sales, like what makes it different, or what makes a sales letter different than a nurture email?
Well, the big thing is that the nurture emails are designed, again, it's sort of a soft sell. And the idea of the nurture emails, that's ongoing. Whereas a sales email campaign it's going to be more assertive. It is going to be more focused on moving people to make that decision. You're going to give them a choice, is what it comes down to. And so, whereas a nurture campaign could be a very long term, once somebody's on that list, they could be on that list for a while to come until they opt out. A sales campaign is going to be for typically a short time frame, maybe a few weeks, and it's going to have typically between 5 and 7 emails. And those emails are designed to increase the likelihood that somebody will do business with you. And so again, all of these emails, and sometimes the concern people have is, well, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be aggressive. We're not being pushy. What we're doing is we're encouraging people, if they've opted in, they're interested, at least to some degree. They have a problem that you can help them solve. Otherwise, they wouldn't have downloaded what you provided. So we're looking at a series of 5 to 7 emails over the course of several weeks, where you continue to share information that's useful, helpful, it's informative, ultimately culminating in an email that is a sales email. It is basically calling them to act. Take the next step or don't, but we're giving you a choice.
Okay. So a nurture email, would that have a call to action in it?
A nurture email absolutely can have a call to action, but it's going to be more of let's say a footnote, but it's not going to be as prominent. It's not the main thrust of the email. Whereas with the sales email, we're communicating more clearly to get them to take that next step. That is the whole purpose of that series.
Okay. So just to kind of recap, we have these lead generating offers that are designed to help us build our email list. We want to have a list of people that we can ultimately sell to. And we get these emails, and is it choose a path, nurture or sales, or is it both and? Like when they get those emails, or how do you decide what you do next after you've got a nice list of emails going?
Well, so the way that I like to set up those campaigns, because they very much work together. What I like to do is when somebody downloads whatever the lead generator is, send them the sales nurture campaign. So again, 5 to 7 emails over the course of a few weeks. And then once that series has wrapped up, then drop them into your nurture campaign.
Okay.
And that way, what happens is when they download that, some percentage of them will take the next step, we're inviting them. We're making that easier. We're sharing content that's going to help them understand the problems, how we help solve it, how their life is better. And once that's done, if they've not, either way, actually, whether they do take the step forward or they don't, then we put them into that nurture campaign to stay in front of them, continue to build that relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. Even anecdotally, as I sign up for something, I've seen sort of the hard sale emails come through. But if I don't unsubscribe, I still want to hear from them, So like if someone's still on your list, even at the end, and they haven't taken any action, you can assume they still want to hear from you.
Absolutely.
I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the sales emails, because I know sometimes the question is, what do I include there? There are several different types of emails that are included. And so the first email that goes out, that's going to be your delivery email. That's going to be the email that basically says, hey, thanks for downloading this. Here's a link. If you'd be interested in talking more, here's the links where you can schedule a call or take that next step. Now, from there, there's a combination of different emails. One is problem and solution. So you send an email that is written almost kind of like a blog post, but you're showing, here's a common problem that our customers have, and here's a solution to solve that. Another type of email is what's called a paradigm shift. And that might be, that a lot of your customers used to think A, but really the reality is B. And so what that is so an example, with orthodontics, it could be that if somebody's never had braces, they might come in thinking, man, braces are going to cost 15 or 20,000, or this is going to be super painful, or they're going to have these they're going to have these ideas that aren't true. And so what the paradigm shift does is says, well, you know what, you might think that with braces, you can't eat this, this, and this, but in reality, you can eat this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. And so another type of email. So we've talked about problem solution, paradigm shift, and another great email is a testimonial. It's a case study showing other customers that you've served and the problem they had. Have a quote, use a video if you've got a video testimonial, but give a demonstration of how you solve their problem. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately what that culminates in is a sales email. And so the question I know people have is, how do I write a sales email? Well, a resource that I highly recommend is this book here. It's called How to Write Copy That Sells. It's written by Ray Edwards. And he gives an outline in here of how to write a sales letter. And there's a structure to it. There's a structure that follows everything that we've talked about. The structure of story. You talk about the problem. You agitate the problem. Then you introduce the solution. Then you show how it transforms people's lives and how it makes them better. You give them a clear offer, and then you invite them to take that next step. And so there are different formats. There are a lot of different ways to write a sales letter that's effective. But it is intentional. It does follow a structure, and it invites them to take that next step.
So when you talk about agitating the problem, can you kind of flesh that out a little bit? What exactly do you mean by that?
So basically what we're talking about there is identify the problem, but then we want to talk about what results from not solving that problem. We want to help people think through what are the consequences if you don't solve this problem. And people are aware of it sometimes, but sometimes by agitating it, it brings it top of mind. And when it becomes more top of mind, then people are more inclined to try to solve that problem.
Is that something that happens all in one letter, or is that broken up into a couple of different letters?
Well, it's the sales email in particular is going to concentrate a lot of that. But we're going to talk about it. So the problem solution email would certainly talk about it, and it would be a theme throughout, but each email is going to have a different focal point.
So what are some common mistakes that you see with sales letters?
A lot of times people will just talk about themselves. They don't clearly identify the problem that needs being solved, or maybe they talk about lots of different problems. And so there's a value to brevity, and being able to really focus in on those key problems that people feel.
And the clarity that we've talked about with
Yeah,
the
absolutely. And that goes back to a couple of weeks ago. It's making sure you know what your customer needs and that you have clarity around your message.
That's great. So, are there any other examples or key messages that you think we need to have as takeaways on the sales letter component?
Well, you know, because there's lots of different ways that can go. That's where having a resource like this book here by Ray Edwards is helpful because it gives a framework. And again, depending on where somebody is, they might be a really good writer. And so having a framework gives them everything they need and they can fill in all the blanks. Whereas other people that maybe writing's not their thing, it goes to finding someone who can help. And that could be someone on Upwork, could be someone like our team who creates these kinds of emails and campaigns, or you know, maybe there's somebody on your team that's a really good writer that just give them the framework and they could run with it.
What about, we talked in a previous show about transitional offers. So like, is there an opportunity there for if you send out that sales email and you don't get a response to send some sort of a transitional sales email or something of that nature? I don't know.
Well, and that's where we bring them to decision point with that sales email, which is the last one in this sequence. And from there, if they don't respond, we put them into the nurture campaign so that we stay in front of them. And of course, periodically, as your email list grows, then you have this group of people. If you're tracking this, if you're using a tool like ActiveCampaign or HubSpot, or there's any number of different tools out there, you can segment your audiences, and the people that aren't your customers, then you could occasionally send out a sales email or send out a specific campaign to invite them back into, you know, invite them to take that next step. Maybe there's a new product, maybe there's a new service, maybe there's just a new campaign in general that you want to communicate to them.
So how important is it to have something like Active or HubSpot? I mean, it feels like it can get complicated. Is it something you can manage without the service, or do you really need the service to do this well?
Well, yeah, you can't do this without those services. So you need something like MailChimp or ActiveCampaign, HubSpot, Keep used to be Infusionsoft, because this is an automated sequence. And so as soon as somebody downloads that, you don't want to have to do that manually. That's going to burn up a lot of your time. So yeah, you definitely want a tool like that to support that.
So last question on the sales email. I know with nurture messaging, a lot of times that's repurposed content. Maybe you have this one great piece of content and you can use that in some nurture emails. You can use it on your social media in different places. But with the sales letter, is that content need to be kind of reserved for the sales letter? I mean, like that's kind of special. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's not going to be, that's not a blog post.
Right. Okay.
That's going to be, that has a very specific purpose and it's going to be tailored to that specific campaign.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's really helpful. I think that this discussion probably brings up a lot of questions that people may have, because there are some nuance, you know, depending on what piece of this process that you're wanting to focus on. And I'm sure you would love for anyone with a question.
Well, and so, you know, to that point, and to, you know, kind of put the bow around all this, absolutely. There are questions that people are going to have, because for a lot of people, a lot of teams, this is not a skill set that either they have, or they have the skill set, but they've never put it to work on this type of campaign. So really the three things: you want a lead generator, something that people would find valuable enough to give you their email address. Once they give you their email address, you want to think through your nurture email campaign. How do you stay in front of people? And some people will stop there. Some people just say, I just want to drip on them with emails once a week, once every other week, whatever that time frame is. But for people that really want to try to ramp it up and maximize the potential from that email list, they then will implement a sales email campaign, which again is going to be sequential. It's going to be 5 to 7 emails typically over a short time frame. So the content itself, the design, especially of the PDF or the lead generator, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach me, Steve, at wayfindmarketing.com. You can always go to wayfindmarketing.com. We have some different blog posts on different topics related to this, different examples. We'll have some of those linked in our show notes. And always happy to get on a Zoom call or a phone call to help people figure this out. The bottom line is, if you don't have something like this on your website, you're missing opportunities, because the majority of people are going to leave without doing anything. And something like this makes it easier to capture some of those folks. And this is what we call a transitional offer in the story brand terms. This is something that can capture them and bring them into your funnel.
Awesome. Anything else that you think we've forgotten to touch on today?
No, this is one of those ones that we could talk about this for a really long time, because there's all sorts of different things that can go into this. Sure. But I think we've covered the basics. So at a high level, you want this on your website. You want it on your homepage. Use a pop-up. Tag your blog posts with it. Give people an opportunity to do something. Give them a way to opt in to your sales funnel, so that you can begin nurturing. You can build that relationship. You can demonstrate value. You can help them by sharing the information and resources that are going to help them make a better decision.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks, Steve, for answering all my questions, because I had a lot. And
good questions.
What do we have coming up next week?
So next Tuesday will be when we do our Navigating Business, and John Carroll of City Leadership. So anybody that's in Memphis, if you've seen Choose 901, John is the one who started that. And John works with a lot of different nonprofits, a lot of different organizations as a leadership coach. And John's got fantastic experience. And he's going to join us, and we're going to talk about, now with everything changing and the need for a lot of organizations to innovate and do things differently. Really, how do you lead and how do you innovate your organization when things seem to constantly be changing? So I'm really excited about this. You and I both went to college with John, so we've known him for a really long time, and he does fantastic work here in the city of Memphis. He's a huge advocate for Memphis, recruiting, getting people to Memphis, and really helping a lot of people here, really have a greater appreciation of Memphis and our city and culture, and all the great things that are here. And so he's always got great insights. I'm really excited about him joining us on Tuesday. Yeah. And of course, there's more information, wayfindmarketing.com/live. And we look forward to seeing everybody back here. Don't forget, this will be available on our YouTube channel. So just Google Wayfind Marketing YouTube, subscribe, like our Facebook page. And you can go to our website and sign up at the bottom in the footer. You'll get the email updates. And we look forward to seeing you back here on Tuesday.
Great. Thanks, Steve.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Have a great